So with our lovely Mr. T, I had just done a little bit of play with him with the flirt pole. So we got some good energy out. So he's just getting a little drink of water. So with the handsome guy, mom had mentioned that she's been working on her stay behavior with a chair at her home. Remember that a lot of times, whatever target you find is beneficial for you and your babe, to be a great visual. So some folks will use a dog bed or a crate or a cot or a raised surface. For some dogs, it makes more sense to have a designated target item. So she was mentioning that she ends up using a chair in the home and then can do other things within the environment while building up his comfort range. So ready, Teddy? Yes, nice job checking in, sir. So with Mr. T, we're going to try a little bit with getting up onto our little target spot. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and go yes and mark that. He again is probably interested in the odors on the blanket. I know that a lot of times, my target mats and blankets, oh, that was very nice, can be, for example, used with other pups and other students. So there's definitely a lot more aroma on my items compared to at home where it's just his usual environment. So with Mr. T, you'll see that I did exercise him prior to working on stationary positions. So the reason I like to get my babes a little bit tired, and I'm not saying to the point where they're overtired, exhausted, and therefore then unable to function. Sometimes people will give so much exercise that then the dogs actually become more rowdy than they even were when they first started. So remember, sometimes you're not trying, oh goodness, you're not trying to do so much energy burning that you're trying to physically only burn out your dog. Remember that if it's always physical activity and very little mental activity, your babe is probably going to be the most physically fit thing you've ever had in your life. But then the problem is we normally cannot maintain or keep up with that type of exercise requirement. So for Mr. T, you can see he is panting. This is because he was playing a little bit ago. He just went and grabbed a drink, and now what I'm doing is I'm reinforcing Mr. T for hanging out on his bed. So this could be, again, eventually you apply the stay. You could then be working on your 3Ds, so your duration, your distractions, and your distances. So if, let's say, Mr. T was doing stellar at being stationary while I'm doing other household items, like maybe you could be loading the dishwasher, or maybe you're practicing going and sitting on your couch while then he sits on his chair. So remember, if it's always me standing and always coming at him and feeding this way, that's a great place to start. But remember, we need to generalize behavior. So we could, for example, go from this to increasing the rate, increase the time between each snack as he's getting as an interval. So let's say Mr. T was doing an awesome job every, let's say, 3 to 5 seconds. There's a big truck going by or a train or something. Or it could be the airplanes. I don't know. There's always something happening here. So with Mr. T, if he notices this big, loud noise, I might go yes and just feed throughout. Actually, I think it might be a really big airplane. So if your babes are ever saying, gee, that noise is a bit spooky or I'm a little overwhelmed, what I do recommend is sometimes pair the odd noise with food reinforcement. Remember, you can't feed or praise for when your dog gets scared. So a lot of times people say, well, you're just going to be feeding them and reinforcing them for the behavior you're not really liking. That's again like me saying, well, imagine my little human fell down and she bumped her knee and she got upset. And if I go to comfort her, pick her up and snuggle her, am I reinforcing her for falling and for crying? Or am I trying to make her feel safe and comfortable again? So the same thing, if I were to give her, let's say, maybe a nice little snack after she had a little bit of a fall, am I feeding her for falling, for the crying, or am I trying to make her, again, feel safe? So Teddy, ready? So Teddy, come. He's like, lady, that was a weird noise. So let's say again, Mr. T, let's say he's non-responsive. He's sniffing something, checking it out. I'm going to go right to his little sniffer, see if I can get his attention. Ready? Teddy. Yes, what a good boy. And I'm going to again feed for that lovely little check-in. We're going to try again to hop up on our spot. So come on up. We'll get him up on his little dog bed. He's like, lady, I don't know, I'm feeling a little frazzled after that big noise. So if Mr. T is sometimes having a moment where he gets a little overwhelmed, remember that when you're feeling nervous or startled or flustered, your ability to think may be out the window. So remember that throughout your training, they are part of it. So if let's say Mr. T is having a little bit of a hard time, I might see if I can get his interest. Ready? Get his attention on me, see if I can get him to maybe try it once more. If your babe is unable to perform a task or a skill or a cue, that is more than likely your babe's only way to say, I'm not comfortable, or I'm not ready, or I don't understand. So right now, after we had that little noise distraction, Mr. T had hopped off his little bed and was a little bit concerned about the weird novel noises. Again, now there's a truck that went by, so there's some great rumbling. So remember that if something is hard going around the environment, or there's a noise or something that surprises your babe, remember to sometimes lower the criteria. So do something that comes easier to both your babe and to you to be, again, feeling comfortable and reliable. So for Mr. T, notice how I'm so much more close to him than when I first started. So if he finds this to be a little bit hard with the novelty that is the weird noises in this building and the weirdness around the building, good job. I want him to start thinking there's value in trying, even if it's a softer version. So now I might, as he's getting more comfortable, work that, ready, Teddy? Work that little stay. And if he wants to lie down, perfectly fine. I want him to think that vegging is also part of the process. This doesn't mean that a stay is going to be always like a relaxation protocol or like a vegging moment. I do enjoy, though, reinforcing babes for when they are giving me behavior versus skill set that I'd like. So Mr. T feeling comfortable and safe and sort of more relaxed would be also what I'm feeding for and boosting. Nice job. So again, funny noises, a bit of a windy day today. So while we're working this little stay, what I'm doing is, again, what I mentioned earlier before we got a little distracted with the noises, is that generalization might start off sort of easy peasy. So to generalize this skill on his chair, you might start off with a shorter time frame. Then you might throw in bigger time frame between each interval for the reinforcements. Then you might throw in some movement. So even you moving doesn't equal the dog should get up and wiggle. So if, though, at any point he's having a hard time with this, like let's say he gets up and takes a little breather, he's not going to get scolded or get into trouble for getting off. Ready, Teddy? But we might try it again. Ready? Come on up. Good job. Even if your pup is, let's say, having a bit of a harder time with one behavior versus another, you may find one day this goes amazing. You can make it around your living room 3 or 4 times. He didn't even move. He got maybe 1 or 2 reinforcements versus 15. But the main goal is that you're not getting perfection, but progress. So if your babe is progressing in the direction you were hoping, then that means that we're going at a rate the dog can understand, but also can tolerate and grasp. So again, Mr. T is going to go and relax again. So if I'm adding movement or distraction, it could be as simple as me moving around him and then feeding him for that. So again, I want him to think that there's a lot of really fun value in not wiggling, which for a wiggly worm like him is really hard. So remember that just because your babe might be a small breed versus a large breed, there are definitely even smaller dogs I feel sometimes have even more oomph than bigger dogs. So a lot of times their energy level could be much higher than, let's say, a Mastiff or a Great Dane or, again, a giant breed. Doesn't mean they don't have stamina and fun too, but I feel the littles sometimes are like little Energizer bunnies. So again, right now I'm just working through some generalization of me moving doesn't equal you move also. So again, you would normally be going yes and marking the stationary position as you're practicing. But sometimes as I'm blabbing, I'm not always marking. But remember, you don't always have to mark behavior. It is a much easier way for your dog to learn what is being reinforced. So you'd go yes as you're feeding throughout the stay position. So if, let's say, he breaks because he got a little bit winded, I might go again, see if we can try it again. Teddy, come on up. Good job. For hopping up in the first place, he's like, it smells great over here. I'm going to feed him for even the jumping up onto the target. So maybe one day you're just doing target training. Every time he hops up, he gets a bonus bit. When he hops off, he gets nothing. And then that way you're building up that staying on the target has more value than getting off of it. Nice job, Mr. T. So right here, perfect little moment where he settled. I might try again a stay. and then just work a few more little moments. So if Mr. T is killing it at this game, you may find one day you work your time frame, so your duration. If again he's having a harder time, I know there's been a lot of novelty with the different very loud noises, but you may find for Mr. T, start off with maybe your time frame, your duration. Maybe that's going amazing. You go from big to little to medium sort of time frames. And then eventually you go ahead and you shorten the time frame, but now you're adding distance or you're adding movement around him. And then the intervals between that are still short, but the distraction of you moving is there. For the bigger one, I know we just mentioned distractions. Distractions could be maybe, for example, noises in the distance. Maybe your neighbors are walking by. Maybe you have company over. Maybe it could be the cat. So I know for a lot of the dogs, distractions are probably one of the harder ones to master behaviors around. Remember that a lot of times the reason your puppies have a hard time generalizing is most people's practice happens in a very quiet or comfortable environment like home. And then when you go to new places or even outside, and there's the heat coming on, he's like, what the heck? So if right there, again, he's a little bit unsure, I'm gonna just regain his attention, see if I can get that little down from him. He's like, oh, I guess so, maybe. And even if we just get a little sit, not the end of the world, he's doing a really nice job. Good job, Mr. T. But novel noises, again, could throw him off. So, but let's say, for example, back to working with your babes, this is where a lot of people struggle, is transitioning from like the home front to field trips or outside of the classroom environment. So if your babe really knows how to do a sit, for example, they'd be able to do a sit from 5 feet versus 2 feet in front of you, while being behind you versus in front of you or by the side of you, in many different types of textured flooring or environments and distraction levels. So a lot of times, when babes can only offer a sit in a very calm but quiet environment with you right in front of them, that doesn't really mean they know the sit per se. So this is where I would recommend that when you're practicing, Teddy, ready? He's like, hold on, lady, this room smells amazing. He says, I might want to add to it. He says, I'm thinking about it. Ready? Come here, you. What a good boy. So if, for example, your babes are ever giving you a hard time, they're having one. So it could also be that they don't understand the concept or what is being asked of them. Ready? Teddy, come on up. He's like, oh, I'm so tired, lady. Ready? Can you try it? What a good boy. So if, let's say, sometimes when you're asking for a behavior, view again the relationship of the babe being a participant in the exercise. So if you're finding they're not doing as well, maybe that's not the greatest day for training. Maybe they're having a day where they're not feeling quite as comfortable. Maybe they're feeling under the weather. So your babe not participating could be the only way they could say, I'm not really feeling it, or I don't understand, or I need more help. So don't view your dog's disobedience as being bad, but instead their inability to perform as there's something that they haven't grasped as the learner and you as the teacher. So make sure that you as the teacher, you're setting your babe up for a successful lesson where there are a lot of great information being delivered in a way the dog can understand and process. So, but again, he's doing a really, really great job with going up to his little target spot. So we'll give him a little break from that. We'll do another little skill.